Okay, hello and welcome to the first day of statistics 7 week for the summer. I'm just going to go over a few things here in the upper part of our JetNet course, especially those that have not received their course pack yet. There's a link underneath this My Stat Lab area right here that says link to course pack blank. So you can always click on that and print out the pages that you need for our live sessions, to watch the YouTube videos, I should say. I clicked it apparently. It's going to take a minute to bring up in Google Docs because it is 258 pages. So that's what you'll want to do if you want to be able to print those out. So there's two main things to the notes for this semester. So before class, I usually ask, I have it on here just to remind you, in this first week, it takes a couple days to kind of get ahead of the game. But I have here, like, watch the 1.1 and 1.2 lecture videos, watch the 2.1 through 2.4. So when you watch those, that's what you're going to do, is watch those videos and fill in the course pack along with me on those videos. Then when we come to the live session, we're going to work on some of the practice worksheets at the back of your course pack in class for practice. Now, the ones that we work on in the live session, I don't always collect those. Sometimes I do. But those are for practice for us to engage in. If you're someone that's at home watching the video right now, I encourage you to have those worksheets out when you're watching the videos and engage in those worksheets as much as you can, even though you're not on the live session. The students that just simply watch the video, the YouTube video, are not going to get as much out of that video as you are if you're engaging in the activity of filling in the course pack, going to Statcrunch, just like we do in the video, all those good things. So highly recommend that. And so you'll kind of see we have a little bit of a pattern here. We're going to watch the videos, and then there'll be a live session on Tuesday and Thursdays. I always have the live session link. And then you can, those that are on the call can faintly see it's kind of grayed out. So once I have the recording downloaded and then back uploaded into JetNet, this will not be shaded anymore. It'll be unhidden, so you'll be able to see that and go back and watch the live session as much as you'd like. Just one quick reminder for this week, this Thursday, I'm not going to be having a live session over 3.1 and 3.2 because I'll be out of town and unavailable. But I did already upload the recording from my live session in the winter for those same sections, 3.1 and 3.2. And so you'll be able to go through those worksheets if you want to use that for practice. And then next Tuesday, when we're together, you can see that I'm going to have you watch the rest of chapter 3 for Tuesday. So on Tuesday, I'm happy to, when we do the practice worksheets on Tuesday for 3.3 through 3.5, you'll be getting lots of practice from 3.1 and 3.2 as well. So hopefully that'll build the understanding there. You can see that each chapter is going to have a chapter review worksheet that's due, that is submitted. And that is always going to be able to be found at the end of the chapter worksheets in the back of your course pack. And I think I have all those pages listed in here. So the chapter 2 review worksheet is on pages 428 through 433. Okay. And if you don't have your course pack yet, so Jonathan, this would be good for you right here on the chapter 2 worksheet. It says click here if you do not have your course pack. So you can click on those. And I'm going to click there because I don't have my course pack yet either. Can you believe it? So I'm going to bring those out today. Yeah, yesterday I was emailing I'm like, hey, where's my course pack? So I don't have mine. Then there are, for chapter 2 and 3, there's 2 projects for each of those chapters because we're just getting started and using Statcrunch. And so we kind of broke those apart. So today we're actually going to work on chapter 2, project 1 together while we go through those. So I know I'm putting you all on the spot. There are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of you here today. So if you're willing, I would love for you all to, this will be good practice to get typing in the chat. How about that? If you're willing to say it out loud, you can just raise your hand. So in the, up on the 3 dots there in the Zoom, you can click on that and you can, I think it looks different for you all. I think it's down at the bottom. It says reactions at the bottom of your Zoom screen. So you can raise your hand if you have a question. So if you would like to share out loud, you can raise your hand there, or you can type in the chat. I would love to know what's everybody's like one thing they're like stressed about right now, whether it's school, a compilation of other things, what's going on? Like, what are you nervous about that maybe I can help you with today to get you off on a good start for the semester? So you can either type in the chat or you can raise your hand and share with the class. And I'll go first. I'm nervous that I'm not going to do a good job. So I always get worried that I'm not going to support my students enough. So that's always kind of my first day jitters, is just hoping that I can get you all on the right start. Anybody else willing to share? Oh, somebody. Passing all my summer classes. Jonathan, do you have you're not taking just my class?
No.
What
I'm
else?
taking 2 other classes. Art history, interpersonal communication, and there's something else I'm forgetting, but I need to pass all of them besides stats.
Okay. So if anybody's in, any of you other people are in any of those classes with Jonathan, this is a great way to connect and start building some help sessions for each of you. Caitlin's nervous about exams. Anything in particular, Caitlin, about the exams?
No, I just don't do well on tests, so it makes me nervous. I second guess myself a lot, so.
Well, hopefully you'll rest assured that at the back of your course pack, there's actually there's reviews. Those are different colors, and there's answer keys to all those reviews. But
Okay.
there is a white sheet that says a sample midterm, and it's like 20 pages long. I assign that for my students to work on, and then I give a bonus. I'll explain when we get closer to the midterm. I give a bonus back on your midterm exam for completing that and how well you do on that when I grade it. And
Awesome.
so the day before the midterm, we always get together and I can answer questions about that and work through those problems with everyone. If you all want to study your own study session together, schedule that. You can do that as well and support each other on that. But our midterm is not 20 pages. Our midterm is usually about 10 or 12. And that's only because we try to make enough space on the paper for y'all to work out. But that sample midterm should be very indicative of the types of problems that are on there. And
Okay.
as well as the worksheets that we work on in class are very indicative. So I know I've been in classes before where it's like, we're doing all these assessments and worksheets and stuff. And then all of a sudden, boom, the midterm's like, looks nothing like what we've been working on. And it's like, okay, that just put me in a tizzy. So rest assured, everything we work on should be indicative of that same thing.
Okay.
Sure, Cole, go ahead.
Yeah, I just haven't taken a math class in like 12 years. So just getting back in the swing of that and doing well.
Awesome. I can empathize with you on, I took off time. Let's see, my first child was born in 97 and went back to school for my master's in 2010. So I took some time off too. And I was trying to do calculus and all this crazy stuff in grad school. It was so stressful. And I tell you what, things were totally different. Like how you write papers now is totally different than when I was in school. And all your bibliography is totally different. And oh my gosh, but what I did, so if this is any of you and you decide to have a study group in my class or another, is I was like, you know what? Mrs. Main's really good at cooking food. So I brought food to all the study sessions and then I let them help me with like the math. So everybody has something to bring to the table. Don't worry. If you all get together for study sessions, everybody has something to bring. Melanie, Wanika, what about you all?
Maybe just the workload with it only being a 7-week course.
Okay. I can say the best thing that you can do for yourself, you've already done. You had your meet and greet with me. We already met. I can see that you're already engaging in all the activities you need to. You signed up for the Remind app. You're on the live session. You're in my stat lab. You're got your course back. So all of those little things this first week. And that's why I have that scavenger hunt, because I want to make sure that you all are in the best position to win the race. Right. So if anybody is a sports athlete or playing an instrument, you know that it's like how you practice is how you play, right, in a game. And so if you go to practice with like not very much effort and all that, that's exactly how you're going to play in the game. But I can tell Juanita that, and actually everyone on here, you're doing the best thing you can. You're being in the live session. That's where you're going to get the most out of the class, is being able to gauge right away. Melanie, what about you? Melanie, she might have it. If you have an earpiece in, I think that somebody yesterday, was it Cole? Was it you? It's like we learned that it kind of gets
It
mixed.
was on the desk and I didn't realize it was connected.
Yeah, gets mixed up with the sound sometimes, so she might not be able to hear us, or we might not just be able to hear her right now. So, okay. So what I would like to do next is just show everyone where some things about my Stat Lab and Statcrunch. Now, a lot of you have already started working, which is amazing. So you should see my Stat Lab screen. Does everybody see that?
Yep.
Okay, because I'm just getting used to having two screens here. So over on the left are the main tabs that you're going to need to know. The Msl Assignments, that's going to give the dates of all the assignments. And I really tried to keep that. The one thing that's always the same is they're always doing Mondays. And even though Memorial Day is a Monday, because we're an internet class, I didn't want to throw you up and make those due on Tuesday, because I thought that would just throw everyone off. So I'm like, I'm just going to leave them. I give you over a week to do those assignments from when we complete the material in class. So I thought it would be fair to say you have plenty of time to complete those. So if you want to take Memorial Weekend off, just work on those ahead of time and you should be fine. Other than that, everything is always due on a Monday, with the very last chapter, I think 10 and 11, and I did them by chapters. Chapter 10 and 11 are due on June 28th, which is our last day of class and the final. So that's how I set those up, so that you'd always know. Now, my Stat Lab, you can do those as many times as you'd like. If you want to get 100%, you can keep redoing those as long as they're done by the due date, for no penalty. Also, the great thing is I made them all so you can do them after the due date, because sometimes things happen and we're like, oh shoot, I didn't realize it was a Monday and I didn't get them done or whatnot. So the problems that you didn't get completed, even if you started the assignment but not finished it, there is a small, I think it's a 15% penalty, maybe a 20%. I can't remember. I have a couple different things. It's a small penalty, but you can work on those till the end of the semester. So don't stress. It's a overall, one assignment is a very small part of your grade. And I always drop the lowest 3 to 4 scores anyway at the end of the semester. So if something happens and your My Stat Lab's not working and it's late at night on a Monday and something gets turned in late, you have a low grade, I drop the lowest 3 to 4 scores. The other thing in the grade book here, the grade book is going to only monitor your assignments for My Stat Lab. Every probably once a week at least, I will go in and grab your scores from My Stat Lab and I enter them into JetNet. JetNet is where your overall grade will always be monitored. And I do my best to always be very up to date on my grading. So if you've turned in worksheets or projects, I try to be very quick on that. Now with me being gone this week, I have to admit I'll get a little behind, but when I get back on Saturday and Sunday, I'll be busting them out. Also, I can see that some people have turned in their Chapter 2 project already. If I get a chance before the due date, well, that's Thursday. So if I get a chance before I leave town, I'll quickly look at those. So anytime an assignment's turned in early, or if you want me to look at it early, just let me know. Hey, Mrs. Main, I already turned this in. Would you give me some feedback? So that's the bonus about turning things in early. I'm always willing to give a little feedback and let you change things before the due date. If you turn something in right on time, it's not likely that I'll be able to do that. But I do try to honor those that have worked to get things in early. Oh, her desktop's not working and she can barely hear us. Oh, yikes. If you want, Melanie, you can always log in on, if you have a cell phone, you could log in on that for the Zoom today, just to be able to hear us if you want to. Okay, any other questions for anyone on Statcrunch and how that works? I'm sorry, on My Stat Lab. I'm going to go to Statcrunch here in a minute. So if you have not already, for the scavenger hunt, I'd like you to join my Statcrunch group, because we're cool. We have our own group, our own data group, because we are statisticians. So when you click on Statcrunch within My Stat Lab, don't do it separate. And then you're going to click on visit the Statcrunch website. Okay. And I don't know about you, but see, mine always does this. It's so irritating. I always have to, it gives me this, oops. I have no idea why. So I exit out and I do it again, and it always works the second time. So if it does it to you, don't feel bad. You're not special. It does it to me too. Okay, so once we're in here, there's a few things. So you should be able to go to my groups, and that's where you're going to be in my group. Now, I gave you the link to my group in the scavenger hunt, so that should help you join my group. So I should be able to see if anybody wants to know if they're in my group. I can verify who's in my group. Lakeisha, Juanita, Lauren, and Michelle are all part of my group. And what I can do is I can copy the group link, and I'm going to paste it in our session. So those that are live on, oh, I know, I'm going to put it in the Google Doc. How about I do that? Genius. I know you guys are genius. I'm going to put it down at the bottom here. Okay, so if anybody that's live on the call wants to join our group, that would be great. Okay, so I believe I stopped sharing, so you can't even see my. Okay, so I'm gonna make sure that, so can everybody see my Statcrunch? Did everybody see how I got into Statcrunch? Because I thought I had it sharing. So from the My Stat Lab main page, if you click on Statcrunch, it brings up this page, and then click on Statcrunch website. Most of the time it doesn't go right here, but I'm there. So you can click on my groups if you'd like. If you want to just start working in the calculator, you're going to click on this yellow thing that says Open Statcrunch. And you'll open that, and that's where you're going to work for when you fill out the course pack pages for my YouTube videos, and then, you know, things that we're going to work on today. Everybody with me so far?
Yeah.
Okay.
Does it function similar to Excel?
It does function similar to Excel, but not completely the same. Like in Excel, you can code it to say equals and do things. It doesn't really do that. So it's mainly, I haven't fiddled around with it much in that way, but I mainly use it to enter my data here, my columns, and then everything I do is up here under like the calculator and summary stats and these other things that we're going to use this semester, and the graphing. So yeah, I haven't used it as far as some of those other operatives in Excel benefits that Excel brings to us. Okay. Any other questions for anybody so far? So as
I do have a question.
Sure.
I thought that I was in the group. I'm in one of the groups. Am I in the wrong one?
Oh no, my groups. Maybe I gave you a wrong group. Let's see if you're in my winter.
I think I might be in the winter one
Well,
because I did it early, but I don't know how. I don't know. I
You know
can
what?
redo it though. I know how to do it, but
Are
I'm in the
you-
wrong one. I'll fix it.
Catlin, Blair, you are. That's okay.
Okay.
I'm kicking you out of the group.
Okay.
I just put it in the Google Doc. Do you have my Google
Okay.
Doc from today?
Awesome.
Okay. So, so did everybody get my email today? That's the one thing I want to make sure, because I typed it in with the head name of math 133 and all that, and I want to make sure generated. Jonathan, did you get my email okay with the Google Doc?
I believe so.
Okay,
I
good.
believe I got your email. Right now, I'm just trying to join the group. It was just taking me a while because I was still registering for
My stat lab and all that.
lab. Yeah,
Okay, that's
but
okay.
I got that registered and everything. So now I'm just trying to join the group. So I got the link. So I should be there.
Okay, yep. So we've got Jonathan's in here.
Yeah.
That's in here, Cole. Melanie's not in yet, but that's okay. So we've got a good handful of people here. Excellent. Okay, excellent. While I'm in my stat lab, does anybody have any other questions about my stat lab? Okay, so I know that today is everything, you know, most of you, some of you have gotten the course back and have been able to watch some of the videos. Some of you are still in the midst of getting the course back and still printing things out. So I probably won't spend a whole bunch of time going over a lot of the material, but I do want to go over some big points of chapter 1 because the 1.1, because they are going to be big things for us this semester. So I'm going to share my screen and I'm going to share my course pack screen. So can everybody now see my hand on my course pack? Yay. Okay. So there's two main things in statistics that we're going to work on this semester. There's descriptive statistics, and that's mainly going to be chapters 1 through 4. That is means, median, mode, percentiles, range, numerical summaries, tables, graphs. Inferential statistics is going to be the last half of our 7 weeks together, and that's chapters 7 through 11. So this is really 1 through 6 about. So chapter 7 through 11 is inferential statistics, and that's where methods used to take results from samples to make generalizations about the population from which the samples were drawn and measure the reliability of the result. So you're probably wondering, whoa, what is a population and what is a sample? So when we talk about a population, we're not just talking about the population of Michigan or the population of Jackson County. We're talking about a collection of all elements, persons, or objects of interest in a particular study. That's important to remember. We only have population data if we have data from all elements. Okay, so when it asks for the population, I want you to describe what the population is and make sure you use the word all. Mrs. Main loves the word all. If we're talking about a sample, we're talking about a subset of the population from which information is collected. So you'll notice in chapter 3, so when you get to chapter 3, I start talking about some data that you all answered in the survey for me. And one of the questions was, how many pets do you have? And so when I looked at that data, I treated that as if it were a sample. I treated it as if our population was all JC students and the number of pets that they had, and our class is considered a sample. Okay, so knowing the difference between the two of those is a big thing for the semester. We're also going to think about the visualizing the process of statistics. So more towards the end of the semester, we're going to get into taking and making inferences, but we're going to talk about early in the semester, what is a population? How do we get a sample? Having a sample, getting some statistics on a sample. Statistics are characteristics from the sample, like the mean or the median. That's a characteristic of the people in the sample. And then we're going to use those characteristics to do some predicting or inferencing about the population parameters, okay, about all people. So again, in chapter 3, we talk about the number of pets that everyone in our class has. And so that's where I would say the average number of pets, that would be a statistic because it's a characteristic. You'll see down here in the table, it's a characteristic that comes from the sample. So the cool thing is S from statistic is the same as S from sample. They go together. And then I'm going to use an average number of pets to do some predicting about all of the pets from JC students. And that would be our population. And if I knew the number of pets from all of our JC students, that would be called our parameter. And notice that the cool thing is parameter goes with population. Those two go together. So the next big thing, and I'm kind of going quickly because like I know not everybody has gone through the notes yet for this first meeting here. So the next big thing that literally Mrs. Main brings up until the last day of class, and students are probably going to be, you're going to be so tired of hearing about it, is I'm going to ask you, is this a qualitative data or a quantitative data? Because every decision we make in chapters 7 through 11 is based on that question. Is it quantitative or qualitative? Okay, a qualitative data variable is something that's categorical. So I might ask you, what is your blood type or what is your eye color? Those are categories, right? You're going to tell me it's brown or blue. And I can't do any averaging with brown or blue, right, on your eye color, but I could say what percentage of the class has blue eyes, right? What proportion of the class has brown eyes? That's a qualitative variable, okay? Quantitative variables now are something that's numerical that I can do a meaningful calculation on, such as your age, right? Or your weight, or your BMI, or the number of pets that you have. Now, quantitative variables are going to have two different kinds. And the two kinds we're going to talk about this semester are discrete, and discrete variables are countable. So if I said, how many pets do you have? You would never tell me 2.5, right? You can't have part of a pet. Or if I said, how many bikes do you have at your house? You can't tell me you have 3.5 bikes, right? You can't have part of a bike. Anything that when I ask you that, if the answer is numerical and you can't have part of it, then it's going to be considered discrete. Okay. Now, there is one variable that's discrete, but we can have it as a decimal apart, and that is a shoe size. Because a shoe size, I can have a size 7 shoe, right? Or a size 7.5 shoe. But because I can't have a 7.25 shoe, it's still considered discrete. There are half sizes, but it makes it discrete because there's only whole size or on the half size, if that makes sense. There's not anything in between. Now, any numerical value, variable that is measurable is going to be considered continuous. And anything that's measured would be like time or distance or weight or liquid, something that's measured, okay? That's going to be considered continuous. And again, I do all these examples on those YouTube videos for you. Any questions so far? I want to check in with everybody. Everybody doing good so far? Okay. The next page, I do go over in the video, but you know what? We do not assess on these levels of measurement any longer, so I'm not going to spend time on them. And then we're to 1.2. And actually, I'm going to save 1.2 for when we get to chapter 4. I had you watch it. I asked you to watch it this week, so when you get a chance, go ahead and fill it out, but we're not going to work on it today. I'd like to spend today looking at chapter 2, because there are no chapter 2 worksheets for practice except for the one that you have to turn in. So I thought it would be fair to say, let's just go ahead and get out that chapter 2 review worksheet so that I can guide you on that first one so that you're feeling good about doing those for the rest of the 7 weeks. So if you want to take a minute and get those out, I'm going to pause the recording again. Okay, so we're back at the chapter 2 review worksheet. And since chapter 2 is the one chapter that we don't have practice worksheets for, I thought we could address some things in the course back and then also in the chapter 2 review worksheet to get you off to a good start for your first assessment that you're going to upload in JetNet. So for those at home, if you want to go to JetNet and look, it's right here, pages 428 through 433 are the pages for that chapter 2 review worksheet. And the first problem on the chapter 2 review worksheet is a graph of the US population versus COVID deaths by race. And so the ones in a light gray are the percent of the overall population. So for instance, the one that sticks out all around the country is the African-American population, because African-American population in the US is only about 12.3% of our population in the US, but they can, at the time in June 25th of 2020, they were actually consisting of 23% of the actual deaths of COVID. And they've attributed that to a number of things, one of which I find interesting. I was watching a doctor that anyone, any race, anybody that lives north of, like, if you draw a line across the US at Tennessee, anybody above there, we have naturally lower levels of vitamin D in our bodies. And so we need to be taking supplements from like September to May. So I just went and got more today. So I'm just recommending this to all my folks here on the thing. If you're not taking supplements and vitamin D, I highly recommend it. that is a natural fighter for COVID and other viruses out there. But I also learned from this doctor that African Americans, there's something in their blood makeup that is just different than other races that makes them more susceptible because they have even lower levels of vitamin D in their blood than others to start off. So they're already more deficit than all of us that live above Tennessee. We're deficit. And if you live above Tennessee and you're African American, you're even more deficit. So taking vitamin D would help with that. And so I just kind of keep trying to spread the word on that. I like to do anything I can naturally. And I'm pretty excited about trying to increase my vitamin D. So if you know anybody, I'm happy to donate some vitamin D if anybody wants to take it, and you know anyone out there that needs help getting that provided, I'd love to do that. Amongst other things, there's other things that attributed to that factor as well. But that's something to notice. So on this first graph, it's just reading the graph. What are some things that we notice? Anybody on the live call have questions about A, B, C, or D, just right off the top of your head that you're thinking? We won't go through all the answers today, but I will make sure that we look at each question and address any questions you might have. So being able to read that first graph. Okay, now the second graph, eek, the second chart. So the second question here says, gonorrhea is an infection caused by a sexually transmitted disease, bacterium that infects both males and females. The following table shows the number of people infected in the US in 2018. And you can see here that we have grouped data, okay? So we're gonna look at some grouped data here in a minute on, from the course pack, but I just wanna go over what's expected. So on this table, I'm expecting you to fill in your midpoints. We're gonna go over how to do that in the workbook, in the course pack today. The relative frequency, the cumulative frequency, and notice that the cumulative frequency, that goes with the frequency. It has to do with the word accumulate. And then the last column says cumulative relative, and that's accumulating the relative frequency. So we're going to go over a big example in our course pack here in a few minutes as well. And then once we have that table filled out, I'm asking you some questions about total number infected in 2018, some lower class limits, the class width, the shape. And we're going to talk about those items again today in the worksheets. Anybody in a live session have any questions so far on question number 2 that they can look over and think of that they might have? Okay. Then the third question is another graph, because chapter 2 is all about graphing. And this graph is an income disparity between Black and white Americans from, it looks like, before 1970. And one thing about reading graphs that's important is being able to read the values in between the years that are marked. Can anybody here in the live session help us figure out what do you think that each of these little squares are valued at if I wanted to find something between the years of 10?
2 years,
They're 2?
I
So,
believe so.
okay. Anybody agree with that?
Yep.
So 1972, 74, 76, 78, and 1980. Excellent. So that's an important thing to read because I believe we ask you some questions about something in between there. Yep, 1967 is where it starts to 2018, which would be 12, 14, 16, 18. So 2018 is going to be right where it drops, right where it ends. And then we ask you to be able to do some reading and estimating with the graph on parts 1 and 2. Finding the difference between them, and then making some inferences about why you think those trends are happening. So part of being a statistician is not just collecting data and not just analyzing the numerical parts of the data, but making some inferences and thinking outside the box, right? Like what might be causing these? What are things going on that I'm not seeing behind the scenes that might be causing this outcome? And so that's what statisticians get to do in their everyday lives. The next problem, the problem number 4 on the chapter 2 worksheet, is another graph. It is A polygon, we're gonna look at one of these today in the chapter 2 notes. I'll make sure I go over with you as well. A polygon has a different kind of setup as far as these values. So the 0, the 176, the 1633, the 1523, the 127 and 0, those are marked, those are frequencies. So the number of US births, so women, and the number of births at the age of the mother. So these are the midpoints that they're representing. Okay. Okay. And so it says the following frequency polygon shows the ages of a random sample of US mothers who gave birth in 2019. Okay. And then we're going to ask some questions about that. So we'll go over a polygon yet today as well. Then question number 5, nope, not our last question, but question number 5 is a histogram. And it is a bar graph representing a histogram, because a histogram is different than a bar graph in that a histogram is numerical. It has to go from smallest to largest. That's the definition of a histogram. A bar graph could be used for categorical data. So like your eye color, it doesn't matter if I did blue, brown, green, and then hazel. And Juanica might do a bar graph with eye colors and do hazel, brown, blue, and green, right? So anything that's categorical, the order doesn't matter, but a histogram has to go in numerical order. And it tells a story because it goes in numerical order. And so this histogram of the number of games that NBA players played in 2019-20, and then you're going to answer some questions about this as well. And it's important to know how the histogram is set up, and they go by their lower limits. So the histograms, the numbers on here are the lower limit. So right here that I'm showing you on this bar where it says 30, there were 30 players that played between 5 and 10 games in that season. And so the lower limit of that class would be 5, and the upper limit of that class would be 10. So histograms work a little bit different than the polygons. Any questions that anyone can see here? Oopsie. Looks like something got mixed up on question number 6. Can somebody tell me what got mixed up on question number 6? And maybe there is no question number 8. Maybe the numbers got off. Let me get my key here. So,
Mine actually goes from 5 to 7.
oh, you know what? I think it did. She goofed up on that. I forgot it does do that. And 6 was an accident. So I'm going to delete that here. Okay. Yeah, so yours all goes, it does go from 5 to 7, but that's okay. And your question number 7, my question number 6 here is an ogive. An ogive is a cumulative where it goes from 0 all the way up through 100%. So this is the number of days in the hospital for patients. So 100% of the patients, so let's read this one here at 7.9. So it says about 12% of the patients, see it in blue, 12% of the patients are in the hospital for about 7.9 days. And it looks like it gets 81% are in for 23.9 days or less. So, or less, okay? So the maximum number of days that a patient was in the hospital in this data set was 75.9, it looks like. And the last little bit here, let me get my mouse over here, is this 3D pie graph. And it's eye-catching for sure. So it's an advertisement. And it says list 3 distinct errors that were made in this graph, which render it useless for actually showing valuable statistics. And it's not hard to find 3 things that are weird about that graph. So that one should be pretty self-explanatory. Okay. Any questions from my live folks before we look at some of these specific graphs in our course pack? Okay. How about, okay. So we're back and we're in the course pack on page 63 for those that are watching the recording. And we're going to work on some of the course pack today. Like I said, mainly because we don't have extra worksheets for understanding. So it's kind of nice for us to spend some of that time together. Now, this doesn't replace going back and watching the YouTube videos and making sure that you have every little piece of the chapter 2 filled out in your course pack. That's very important, but we're going to do bits and pieces of it today in class. So when we're reading a table of grouped data, you can see that there's 2 values. So in example 2 here, it says the following frequency distribution shows the percentage grades on the final exam for 7 sections of Math 133 in 2018. And so this second class says 40 to 49.9. It's a group. That means that 8 students, this 8 here means that 8 students scored between a 40 and a 49.9 on the final exam. We don't know their exact scores, but we know that they fell in this class, is what we call it. Now, the first class says below 39.9. So they decided to start at 40 and then make the first class anything below 39.9. And then, so 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, we call those the lower class limits, the smallest value within a class. Okay, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80. The upper class limit is the largest value within a class. And it says it's always rounded, but it means everything up to, but not including the next lower class. So that's why we usually try to make the lower classes the even amounts. And then your upper class is just below the next lower class. That's how we do that. So we define the lower classes and then we fill in the upper classes next. And we'll do one of these from a blank one later on today. So the class width is the difference in consecutive lower class limits. So it's not 40 to 49.9, it's 40 compared to 50, and 50 compared to 60, and 60 to 70, and 70 to 80. So the width is 10. Okay, so D says find the class width. So the class width is 10. Now, most of the time, the class width will be consistent. Sometimes I think it's in our chapter 3 worksheet. There's one where the class width is not consistent. But for the most part, it usually is. It says state the third class. So the third class would be 40, I'm sorry, the third class would be the 50 to 59.9. And the second, it says state the second class's lower class limit. So the second class is the 40 to 49.9, but it says the lower class limit. So that would be 40. State the sixth class's upper class limit. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. The upper class limit would be 89.9. What was the modal class? So in chapter 3, we talk about the mode. The modal class or the mode is the class that has the highest frequency. So it looks like the modal class is 70 to 79.9. And that's because, oh, nope, I mixed up. It's 80 to 80.9. And it's because 45 is the highest frequency of all of the classes. And so it's the modal class, 80 to 89.9. To pass the final exam, a student needs to score 70% or higher. What percentage of students pass the final exam? So that would be anybody in this category, 70 to 79.9. So 32 students or above. It says 70% or higher. So that means we're also including the 45 and the 80 to 89.9 and the 34 that scored above a 90. So that's 77, that is 111 students. Any questions so far? And this didn't ask just for the number of students, but it says what percent of students. So that means 111 out of the total students. And how many total were there? There were 165 if we would add up all of the students. So 111 out of 165, when we divide that, we get 0.673, and that becomes 67.3%. Questions so far? So we're going to do one where we actually choose our own class, lower class limit, and build on our own. And so at the bottom here, it's important to know how to do that. It says how to choose the lower class limit of the first class. Choose the smallest observation in the data or a convenient number slightly lower than the smallest observation in the data set. It is often nice to choose 0 if it makes sense. Any questions on this page here, 63? No question is dumb or silly. They're all valuable. Okay, so I'm going to talk about determining the class width, but I'm going to actually use it in a problem in a couple pages. We're going to talk about it, but I'm going to, oh, no, I guess we have to do it here. I was thinking we build it in somewhere else. I guess we're going to do it here on the at-bats. Alrighty, so we were given some raw data here on the number of at-bats. So in a baseball, Jackson College men's baseball team, who, by the way, is always ranks very high at community colleges in the US. These were their number of at-bats in different seasons. They get different games in this season of 2013 to 2014. It says construct a frequency distribution below with 10 classes using 0 as the lower limit of the first class. So we know this is going to start at 0. And we have to decide how wide are the classes going to be. So up here, this is valuable to have on your note sheet for the midterm. It says decide on the number of classes, which we said we were going to have 10. They told us, right? 10. Generally, there should be between 5 and 20 classes. And the smaller the data set, the fewer classes you should have. So to find the class width, we're going to take the largest data value minus the smallest and divide by the number of classes. So our largest data point was 148 at-bats. Minus the smallest, which is 2. And we want to have 10 classes. So that becomes 146 divided by 10. And that becomes 14.6. And now notice up here underneath the notes, it says round up to a convenient number, often an integer, and multiples of 5, 10, 100 are nice. So I say we round this up to 15. Okay. So we're going to use the width of 15 and the fact that they wanted us to start at 0 to build all of the lower class limits first. So we're going to take 0 and we're going to add 15. So the next lower class starts at 15. Then we're going to add 15. So the next one's at 30. And then we're going to add 15. So we have 45, 60, 75, 90, 105, 120, and 135. Everybody following along with that? Then we use these lower class limits to round just barely down for the upper class of the upper limit of the previous class. So this is 15. So my upper limit of this previous class is going to be at 14.9. Now we know that they could never have part of an at bat, but we're doing that just to basically cover our bases, right? Like in baseball. So we really know that they're only going to have up to 14 bats. So we're going to count how many games did they only have between 0 and 14.9 at bats. So I'm going to cross them off as we count. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So I'm going to put a 5 there. Then the next upper limit is going to be just below 30. So that would be 29.9. And so I'm going to count how many at-bats were between 15 and 29.9. So 1, 2, 3. There's 3 games. 4. So we following along so far? And because our width is 15, then you can see that our width between the upper should also be 15. So I'm just going to go ahead and fill these in for you to see. And this one, I'm just going to say 135 plus. And to round out this table, I'm going to go ahead and just fill in the frequencies so that we can move on to another topic on another page. So I have 1, 2, 2, 3, 2, 2, 1, 2. Any questions on this page from my live group here? Okay. The next page I would like us to look at is page 65, because we do focus on the shape of our graph a lot this semester. So it's good to start thinking about what do they mean by shape. So on page 65, this top graph, we would consider this a uniform shape where the graph is roughly at the same height or percentage. They're not exact, but they're roughly the same. The next shape that we call this bell-shaped, we're also going to call it symmetric. So you'll see actually the word symmetric more often than not. It's where if you were to draw a vertical line through the middle, the left-hand side looks very much like the right-hand side, like symmetric. They say like our faces, we look to each other, we look symmetric, even though our face is really not, we look that way. So it looks like a bell, something like this. Bell-shaped curve is what we should be able to draw over that.
Here is some information about cell. Cell is a...
Okay. And then the third one down says it's skewed right, or we might say it's positively skewed. And that's because it gets skinnier off to the right. If you've ever been to like the fair, I don't know why I would bring this up. I don't even know if people go to fairs anymore. Well, not with COVID, but before COVID, right? We had fairs. They were called county fairs, and you'd go see them pull taffy. Has anybody ever seen where they pull taffy? They make taffy. And it gets really thin. That's how I think about this. Wherever it's thin, that's the side where it's skewed. Now we all might have a little different visual or word that we use to describe that, and that's okay. Whatever word you think of to remind you that it's positively or right skewed, use that word. Now this one here on the bottom is called left skewed, and that's because it's thinner on the left. There are a few weird data points pulling it to the left. Up here on the one that's right skewed, there are a few weird data points on the top end that are pulling it to the right. Any questions on that page? Okay, I would like to skip a page and briefly speak on a stem and leaf plot. We don't focus on these much this semester, but they're good to discuss. A stem and leaf plot is a graphical display of quantitative data along with their frequencies. The stem is the value to the left. And there's always a description. So right up here it says decimal point is 2 digits to the right of the colon, and the leaf unit is 10. Okay, so 2 digits to the right of the colon. So for instance, it says the data set includes all the states, DC, Puerto Rico, and the Virgin Islands. This means that there are a total of how many leaves? So that would be the 50 states plus DC, Puerto Rico, and the Virgin Islands. So we said that there were 55 leaves, if you count them all. So I believe I counted 55. So it says Michigan appears in the chart as 5:1. So that would be 5 and colon, it's not the 0, but it's :1, 5:1. Interpret this value for Michigan. Now remember, this is the number with disease per 100,000 residents. And this is for chlamydia in 2008. Okay. So that would be 5, because it says the 5 is a 10, a leaf unit of 10. So this would be the tens unit, leaf unit, 2 digits. Decimal point is 2 digits to the right of the colon. So this is actually 510 per 100,000. Usually the stem and leaf plots aren't that hard to read, and we don't do many of these in the class. This one is a little bit harder to figure out than others. So they have 510 cases per 100,000 people in the state. How many states have rates above Michigan? So if you count all of the ones that are above Michigan, there are 29 of them out of the 55. And that is 0.527, I believe. That's 0.527, so 52.7%. Compare and contrast this stem and leaf plot with a histogram. So you can catch those things on the YouTube videos, but it's nice on the stem and leaf you get some raw data, where the histogram you don't, it's grouped. I think that's one good thing about the stem and leaf.
I had a question about the stem and leaf.
Sure.
Why, I guess I'm just confused about why it would be 510 instead of 51, or is it that you just use that 1, you get rid of the 0 and it becomes 5:1, and then you go 2 places to the right?
So how I read that, it says the decimal point is 2 digits to the right of the colon. And the leaf unit is tens. So this would be 5 would be 50. And the decimal point is 2 digits to the right of the colon. So the decimal, so we have 5, and then the 1. So let's just put Michigan. Michigan is really 5 and 1, right?
Okay.
And it says the decimal is 2 digits to the right of the colon number is what they're saying. So the decimal is actually here. It's 2 digits to the right.
Okay, so that 0 that's before the 1 in the actual plot, that's irrelevant because we're only using the 5 and then the number that is identified. Okay.
Yep. So the 0, the one that you just mentioned, that one would be 500.
Yeah, I wasn't sure if it was 2 decimal points to the right as it is in the graph, which would make it like, I guess I'd make it 501. Never mind.
Yep. So each of these digits represents a state or a US territory.
Okay.
So, yep, so this 8, each of these 8s right here represent 580.
Okay.
There it is.
Thank you.
It is quirky to read. Like this one represents 830. Yeah, they're quirky. Okay. Let's turn to page 68. So 68, we've looked at group data before. So these are back to that final exam data that we talked about a few pages ago. But now we want to be able to do something with this data. Well, because it's grouped into these classes, we can't just find the average of these students' exam scores because we don't have their raw data, right? And so all we know is that there were 5 students that scored a 40 to a 49.9. So for us to be able to do something measurable with this data, we need to find a class midpoint to represent those students, if that makes sense. So this gray box at the top here on page 68 is important because it tells us how to find a class midpoint. And this is especially important for on the worksheets where there's classes that aren't evenly spaced. So on the chapter 2 worksheet, I think there is one that might be, those are all evenly spaced on the chapter 2. It's the chapter 3 worksheet that has some classes that are oddly spaced. So to find the class midpoint, we take the mean of the consecutive lower class limits, which really is taking lower class limit plus next lower limit and dividing by 2. Now, since the first class says below 39.9, it obviously doesn't have a lower class limit. So we're going to start with one that does, and then we'll work backwards with a pattern. Okay, so let's start with the one that has 40. So this class midpoint is going to be 40 plus 50, the next lower class limit divided by 2. And make sure that you do these, the numerator all together. So 40 plus 50 is 90 divided by 2.
45.
So that one's 45. Yep. And we could go on and say 50 plus 60 divided by 2, right? If we wanted to. Would be 55. But the cool thing is once we find one, if there is a consistent width, which there is, right? There's a consistent width of 10. Once we know the consistent width of 10, we can then build upon that. So this one's 45, we established by hand. Then we could add 10 to get 55, add 10 to get 65, add 10 to get 75, add 10 to get 85. This one says above 90, so we're going to go with the pattern of adding 10 to get 95. And then on the very first one, we're just going to go back to that 45, and we're going to go with the pattern that we would have added 10. So if we subtract 10, the first midpoint should be 35. Any questions so far from everybody? the last little piece in this gray box, which isn't, there's not much there, but it is important, is called a frequency polygon, okay? These work much different than a histogram as far as what is on the graph. So this is important, definitely important to take notice of, and also for your note sheet for the midterm, but also for the chapter 2 worksheets that you're turning in. It's a line graph that uses class midpoints on the horizontal axis and frequency or number on the vertical. So the points on the axis are midpoints. Those are all midpoints of the class. So notice that if we didn't have the table up here, we could have found the midpoints by looking at this polygon, because all of these are the midpoints of 25, 35, 55, 65, so on and so forth. Does everybody see that? And the graph shows the midpoints, and also notice here it says they can be either frequency polygons, and they use the relative frequency. So there can be frequency or relative frequency. But this is important to note, this last bullet, it says there should be a fake starting and ending classes with frequency 0. So this one is a fake class right here, the 25 midpoint, and then this 105 is also a fake class. These are important to note for if you have sticky notes with you. These are important to put a sticky note on, because you're going to come back to these for the chapter 2 review worksheet. I know stuff. Any questions so far? Not trying to move too fast. Just stop sharing this to make sure. See if anybody has any questions so far. Oh, yeah, Wendy had to leave to get her children from school. Caitlin, Melanie, everybody doing okay so far? You could always give you the thumbs up too and the reactions if you need to wave your hand if you have questions. So if we turn to page 69, this gives us a chance to look at filling in a table with some terminology we haven't talked about yet, that you will also catch on the video. So the first piece that we haven't talked about yet is frequency. So frequency would in this case be the number of students. This is going on again with that final exam data. So the number of students might also be called frequency. The relative frequency is, they actually describe it in a previous page, but relative frequency is taking the proportion, the frequency, which is 2, and dividing by the total. And how many students did we say we had? I think it was 7, 19, 30, 50, 76, 88. So 88 students, so this would be 2 out of 88 for 0.022. And relative frequency, I leave it as a decimal form. You could turn it into a percentage form, but leaving it as just in raw decimal form is fine. And then the next one is 5 out of 88, which is 0.0568. And the next one is 0.1364, 0.125, 20 out of 88 is 0.2273. 3 to 4 decimals is appropriate. And this one is 0.2955, and the last one is 0.1364. Okay, so this is our frequency and our relative frequency. Now, the cumulative frequency up here by definition is the sum of all previous frequencies up to and including the current class. So the cumulative frequency is directly related from the frequency. So I'm going to draw an arrow. Okay, this cumulative frequency is directly drawn from that. So the first class cumulative frequency is just the frequency from the first class. So we start with 2. Then the next one is taking the first class and adding the second class. So cumulatively, all of the students that have scored up to and through 49.9, which would be 2 plus 5 or 7. And again, the next one would be up to and through 59.9 on the exam. So that would be 2 plus 5 plus 12, which would be 19. So you could take the previous cumulative frequency, add the next frequency, and that would also get you there. So this one would be 30. This one would be 50. This one is 50 plus the next 26. So this would be 76. And adding the last 12 gets you to 88. Notice that the very last class on the cumulative frequency should be the same as your total number of students in the course. These should always be the same. Any questions so far? Okay, so the cumulative relative frequency is similar in that it's accumulating, but it's accumulating the relative frequency or that cumulative percent here. So this relative frequency, I'm going to draw an arrow, goes with the cumulative relative frequency. So again, the first class, we start with the first relative frequency, which is 0.022. And you can just simply add the next one. So 0.022 plus 0.0568 gives you 0.0795. Another way you could do it is if you have the cumulative frequency, you could just go and take that cumulative frequency. So 7 divided by 88 should give you, I'm sorry, yeah, 7 divided by 88 should give you 0.0795. So likewise, the next one, I'm going to do it that way. My cumulative frequency is 19. So 19 divided by 88 should give me 0.2159. And that was 19 divided by 88. Okay. The next one should be 30 divided by 88, and that's 0.3409. And this would be 0.5682. And the next one, again, you could be adding up all the relative frequencies through 89 point, the class of 89.9, or you could just take 76 and divide by 88. And you have 0.8636. And interpreting, this means that 86.36% of the class scored below an 89.9% on the exam. And then the very last cumulative relative frequency very well should be 1.0, right? Or 100%, because it's that total of 88 divided by 88. Any questions so far? So letter B at the bottom says, what percentage of students scored 79.9% or below? So that means we're looking at the cumulative relative. So over here, the exam grade, so 79.9% or below, then I'm going to go all the way over to the cumulative relative percent and find out that that's 56.82%. Any questions so far? So the last major graph that's different that we're going to look at, well, there's two we're going to look at, but the Ogive is probably the last one that's probably new and different to everyone. It's called an Ogive. It's not a dance. That's the jive. I learned how to do that in school. Yeah, okay. So an ogive is a line graph that uses upper class limits on the horizontal axis and cumulative relative frequency or cumulative percent on the vertical axis. There is a fake first class that has cumulative frequency or cumulative relative frequency of 0. So let's just mark it. This one is a fake first class. It's important to know that because there's an ogive, I think, on the Chapter 2 review worksheet. Okay. And a line is ogive is a line graph that uses upper class limits on the horizontal. So upper class limits, not midpoints like on the other one that we did, the frequency polygon. This uses the upper class limit. So this is an upper class limit. So this class would be an upper class of 39.9, and the lower class would probably be just above this 29.9, so at 30. So this is the class that this dot represents, is the class. This would be the first class, right? The actually the first class, because the other one is a fake one. Okay. So B says, what is the first class of a cumulative frequency distribution? It is 30 to 39.9. What is the third class of a cumulative frequency distribution? So there's the first one. That would be the second. And so the third one would be 50 to 59.9. And the last little question here says, interpret the meaning of the data x equals 69.9. So they want us to interpret this one right here. So we know that that's the upper class limit, right? So this is the class of 60 to 69.9. And it looks like this is a cumulative percent. So it looks like it's somewhere between like maybe around 33.33. So if we interpret that, we can say approximately, because we're guessing, right? 33% of students scored below, because this is cumulative. So from 0 all the way up here to 69. So below 69.9% on the final exam in 2018. So when I ask you to interpret, I do expect a good full sentence of interpretation, though there's going to be a lot of spots this semester on worksheets and midterm and final where I ask you to explain. So I expect some kind of an explanation. Sometimes it's as simple as it's skewed, so we know we're going to use the median. You'll know what I'm talking about later, but on an interpret, that's usually a good sentence, does that. The last graph.
I had a question about this one
Oh,
real
sure.
quick. So when it says which type of ogive is drawn, would that refer back to the left, right balanced, or is that the wrong terminology for this?
Okay. I'm glad you did that. Which type of ogive? They're asking if it's a cumulative relative or a
Okay,
Yeah,
thank you.
yeah, sorry about that. It's a cumulative relative. I skipped it. I'm so glad you brought that up. Any other questions on this one, on the ogive? The last one is one that most of you have probably seen before as far as a time series plot. Time series meaning that it goes by time on the horizontal. So this one starts at 1990 and goes through like 2019. And this is the unemployment rate. And we asked some questions, so doing some estimating. The blue line is the unemployment rate for white Americans, and the yellow is for African Americans. And it says, estimate the unemployment rate for white Americans in 2010. And so that would be about right here. And I would estimate that at about maybe 9.1. So 6, 7, 8. Yeah. Oh, 8.9. I think in my graph, in the class, I probably said 9.1, but I'd really say it's about 8.9%. And interpret would be approximately 9.1% of white Americans were unemployed in 2010. And then it asked for the same for Black Americans in 2010, which would be right here, which I would say is right about at 16%. And I would interpret it just about the same, right? So approximately 16% of Black Americans were unemployed in 2010. So, and it's just asking you to list some characteristics of the graph. You can see that both races tend to like kind of follow each other the most. It looks to me like Black Americans is a little bit more like sporadic as far as like it's got sharper up and downs than the white Americans. And what I think is awesome is they get really, really close. And actually in 2019 and 2020, I think African Americans were at their lowest unemployment rate ever, which is awesome. And then we had this wonderful virus called COVID, right? And it kind of threw everybody into a tizzy in our whole country, the whole world actually, which is unfortunate, but it is what it is. And now we're doing our best to figure out how to live with it, right? When it gets picking up our kiddos from school. Okay, any other questions from anyone? I'm going to pause.
Chat night, or are they there for the entire duration of the course.
Oh, do you mean the YouTube ones or like today's recording?
Like today's recordings, the live recordings,
Okay.
like just in case you want to check something back if
Yeah,
you
that's a
forgot or
great
something.
question. That's a great question. So once I download today's link and I upload it into JetNet, it will be there until the class is over. Yep, so you can always go back and look at any of the worksheets that we're working on all the way through the end of the semester. I leave those links up. Yep, good question, good question. Today we're done a little bit early, but I know you all have plenty to do with your, oh, I know, I wanted to do the chapter 2 project 1. Do we have time for that? We have 15 minutes planned. Everybody's good with that? So let's go to, I almost forgot. So I'm going to go that momentarily. So we're in JetNet. You're going to find the projects. So here, so the only thing that's majorly due while I am away in the next couple days is this chapter 2 project 1. And you're going to click right here where it says, here is a form for you to use to enter your answers. So click there. And it should always make you make a copy. And that's so you don't edit mine, because I have had students accidentally edit mine. Oh, I know. Nobody's hollering at me. I forgot to share my screen. So let me go back. So the projects, you should be able to click right here where it says here, where my mouse is. And it says make a copy. If you're not familiar with using Google Docs, I am happy to help you with that on the side. Send me an email. We'll set up a time to Zoom together. I love Google Docs because I can get to them on my phone. They're super nice to use. And actually, anybody that's younger than probably 21 right now or 22 is probably more proficient at Google Docs than myself, because I think you all learn that now in middle school and high school. So it says find a publicly available data set on Statcrunch. Okay, so I'm going to go back and share my Statcrunch screen. Here, can everybody see my, I am in my stat lab and I'm going back to Statcrunch. And it's actually not on this data set, shoot. So you're gonna find, if you go, whoopsie, back to the main screen and hit Statcrunch. And then click on Statcrunch website. And then you're going to click on data sets. So not my data, but just click on data sets. This will be data sets that are just put out by different people in Statcrunch, which is really nice. So it says your data set needs to have at least 2 qualitative variables and 1 quantitative variable. So I'm going to pick the first one for us to practice today, but you cannot pick the first one because I'm picking the first one. So I want you all to try picking something different where you have to think outside the box. But I'm picking movie budget and box office earnings so that we can do this together. So notice here on the project, I'm going to go back to that for a minute so you can all see that. On the project, it says, put your name. Can everybody see my project page again? I'm just making sure that it's actually flipping back and forth. So you're going to put Sarah Main. What data set did you choose? Movie box, movie budgets, and box office. Okay. What is the first qualitative variable you chose? Okay. So I'm going back to that. Anybody in the live session want to test what they've learned so far and tell me what is a qualitative variable on my list of data here? What is one that is considered a qualitative?
The name of the movie?
A name of the movie. Excellent. Okay. So I'm going to go back here. It says, I'm going to write that in, but it says paste in your bar chart of this first qualitative variable. So I have to make a bar chart. So can everybody, has everybody seen my Statcrunch? Did I switch it over right? You guys give me the thumbs up. Okay. And thank you, Anika. So I'm going to go to graph and I'm going to go to bar and I'm going to say with data. And then it's gonna let me choose of my data set, the variable, and I'm gonna say movie. And so movie's now in the white box, and I'm gonna let everything just play out as it is. I'm not gonna change a thing. I'm just gonna hit compute and see what it gives me. Well, I don't like that. Let's see here. What did I? Maybe I want chart and columns. I think I want chart and columns for movie. Let's see if that's a better. It's not letting me do that. Oh, we didn't like that either. Did I not choose? Oh, with data, bar plot with data, movie. Group by, no. Grouping options. Split bars. Order by value ascending. There is no value. So this is thinking it's numerical. Where is my? I'm fairly sure we did this with the bar, but maybe it was in chart and columns. By worksheet. No, I don't want that. This is weird. Because it wants us to make a bar chart, which, does anybody else see something different on their graphing opportunities?
Mine doesn't look different, but it's coming out like a bar graph.
Well, which one are you choosing, bar plot or chart?
I'm choosing bar plot and then with data,
Yeah,
and then I just click compute, and then
you chose movie. And what did you do ordering by?
I didn't change anything besides just picking the data set.
Why is mine? Does yours look like mine? There's like nothing there to see. That's why I don't know what.
I thought we were supposed to pick a different one, so I picked my own data set. So that might be the problem. I'm opening the movie one now.
Yeah, let's see. I'm gonna do it with month and see why, oops, and see if it looks better with month. Oh, it looks much better with month. Oh, you know why? Because no movie happened more than once. So that it's gonna show every movie as its own. So that would have been a terrible one for me to choose. So month, you can see all the months are listed. Can everybody see my bar chart now? It looks much better. So then you're gonna, if you right click while you're on the graph and click on copy image, does everybody see that? I'm gonna hit right click and copy image. And then I'm gonna show you how I'm going back to my Google Doc, and I'm clicking in my Google Doc, and I'm gonna hit return. And then I'm gonna say Control V. If you write these down, Control V lets me paste. You can also right click and choose paste. And then it pastes the graph right into your Google Doc. It's super awesome. And you can make it, shrink it down so it fits inside the Google Doc better by grabbing the corner, and there it is. And then it asked me to find a second well, I did it in the wrong spot. Oh, what in the heck here? What's his name? Okay, what is the second qualitative variable? Well, this one doesn't have two qualitative because the other one, movie, I can't really use. I wanted to do a pie chart. So I'm going to do a pie chart for you all, but I'm using the same one. I'm going to use the same variable, but you should have two different qualitative variables and one quantitative. So the second qualitative variable should be a pie chart. So I'm going to show you how to do a pie chart in Statcrunch. So you're going to go to graph and pie chart and with data. And I'm going to use month again, only because my data set does not have two good qualitative variables. Yours should. And there it is. There's all 12 of my months. I'm going to right click again. I'm going to copy image. I'm going to go back to my project, which you can see here. And in my project, I'm going to right click and paste. And there it is. And then it says, what quantitative variable did you choose? And I'm going to choose year for mine. And it says paste in your histogram. So I'm going to go back to my Statcrunch. I'm going to get out of my pie chart. And I'm going to go back to my Statcrunch. And I'm going to go to graph. And I'm going to click on histogram. Now, I'm going to show you guys something else you could do. You could probably save. So I'm going to do, I chose to do year, and then I'm going to hit compute. And it created my histogram for me. And my shape of my histogram looks like it's skewed left, just as checking it out here. I'm going to go back to my Google Doc, and I'm going to right click and paste in my histogram. And there it is. I didn't ask you any questions about any of them. It's just about how do you make a bar chart, how do you make a pie graph, and how do you make a histogram in Statcrunch. That's what your first project is all about. Anybody have any questions? Cole and Jonathan, you're okay so far? Okay. So I think that's all for today, which is super exciting. Look how much we got done today. And there's plenty to do. Jonathan, let me know if you get hung up on not being able to get your course pack shipped to you overseas, but you should be fine.
Yeah, I'll let you know.
Okay.
I'll let you know.
Okay. And then everybody on the call, don't forget to be signing up for a time to meet with me on Genius, on the Sign Up Genius. I'm going to extend some times through next Monday, since there are some people that have not gotten on yet, and I'm going to be out of town the next couple of days. Other than that, I will see you all next Tuesday, because this Thursday, don't forget, I'm out of town. I've already linked up some videos for you to watch for 3.1 and 3.2 worksheets. And I will be putting this link out this afternoon yet. Have a great day. We'll talk to you all next week. Send me emails, questions if you have any.